I'd like to explore wisdom leadership with you today. We live in a world where there is a lot of drama, and we're very easily attracted to drama. Drama sells, bad news sells, excitement sells. Peace, natural feelings of goodness don't make very good news in terms of sales, and so we don't hear so much about those kinds of things. But I think there's something very interesting if we look at what happens where there's drama. Carl Jung, I think, talked about the drama triangle, where you have the perpetrator, you have the victim, and you have the rescuer. And the perpetrator obviously is the person who apparently is creating the drama. That's the person who is the bully, or the person who's doing the things that cause other people to become victims. The victims are the people who are suffering from it, obviously, and the rescuers are the people who feel like they need to save either the perpetrator or the victim from themselves and their behavior. I was speaking with somebody recently who introduced two other dynamics into this cycle. This is the rebel and the survivor. And she told me that when you unlock the survivor, you unlock the whole drama system. What I think is very interesting is how can we behave when we find ourselves caught in a drama triangle or a drama pentangle, if you've got all those five elements to it, in a way that enables us to get out of the drama and defuse the drama and help everybody to become more functional again. Because the problem with drama is that everybody becomes less functional. Once a perpetrator is on that kind of cycle of drama, it's like the victim sucks them further and further in. The more a victim becomes a victim, the more it becomes inevitable that the perpetrators are going to do more harm to more victims. It's a very fascinating dynamic, that, and it helps us to see how the dynamic between the perpetrator and the victim is a two-way dynamic. Because if a victim comes back with a certain kind of strength, it defuses very often the power of a perpetrator. But typically what we learn to do as victims is to go further and further into victim mode. We constrict ourselves more and more. We cut ourselves off to protect ourselves more and more. And in a strange kind of way, we create this kind of attraction dynamic for more harm to be done to us. It probably feels very shocking to say it like that, because we also live in a culture that pays a lot of attention to victims and very much rejects perpetrators. But one of the things I've come to understand is that perpetrators do bad things because of their own pain. Now, this is not an excuse. Nobody has an excuse to do things that are illegal or harmful to other people. But I think as a society, we have a responsibility to understand that, because if we put all our energy into the victims and we don't put any energy into supporting perpetrators in terms of the pain that they're experiencing, we actually just keep the cycle going. So from my experience, where I've seen people become bullies or become even just, in a household, when you get into fights and one person is the aggressor in the fight, so to speak, and the other person is the hurt person who's retreating and playing the victim in that particular fight, which is a very common dynamic in any family. Again, what you see is the more the victim goes into being victim, the more typically the person who's pushing the fight will push harder and harder. But what you also find when you disentangle from it all is that the person who appears to be the perpetrator is always very hurt inside, or experiencing some pain, or they're under stress. And when they're not under stress, they're probably a very nice person and everything's fine. But when there is stress there, when they're feeling pressure from a situation, that's when these dramas arise. And so I think it's important to be aware of that, because we will never be able to resolve the level of drama we experience in our households or in our human experience if we don't understand the dynamics at play in each of these different positions. The rescuer is an interesting one. Many people who are highly sensitive are very attracted to being the rescuer. They want to become the healer, they want to become the helper, they want to step in and try to rescue everybody from themselves. They often want to save the perpetrators and try to make them into better people. They often want to save the victims and make everything all right for them again. Actually, the difficulty with the rescuers is that they don't like the drama and they don't like the pain that sits beneath the drama or behind the drama. And so they step in fundamentally actually to reduce their own pain, not the pain of the people who are caught in that dynamic. And because they're really wanting to reduce their own pain, they go into a mode of trying to smooth everything over and make everything disappear as quickly as possible, because the pain that they experience when that drama erupts is so unbearable that they will do anything to get rid of it. Many of us have learnt this when we were very young. Maybe there was tension in the family, and in order to handle the unbearable feelings that surrounded us when maybe our parents were fighting or our siblings, we learnt how to be a rescuer just because we couldn't handle what was going on inside ourselves. So in a strange kind of way, we're also in this pain dynamic or pain-fueled dynamic, just trying to take a different role. And we become the people, I learned a lot of this in my life, we become the people who try to pour oil on the water to smooth it down. We become the people who try to step into those conversations and get rid of all of the drama so that it becomes peaceful again. And then we feel satisfied because our own pain has been dealt with, even if other people's hasn't actually necessarily. And unfortunately, these kinds of triangles tend to rise up again and again and again unless the underlying roots get dealt with. Let's bring in this rebel and the survivor, because I think these are also very interesting energies that sit in this dynamic. The rebel, and you probably have experienced this one as well, is the person who rebels against the whole lot and goes out to try to find their own path. And very often they are very much against all the drama. We see this a lot in the world of so-called conspiracy theories. There are truth seekers in that world, and they do a really good job of trying to figure out what's really going on, what's behind the drama. But in addition to the truth seekers, there are the rebels, and they are the people who are very critical. They bring in different but not necessarily truth-based interpretations of what's happening. They often contribute quite strongly to the drama, actually. They foment drama in a way through their rebellion. And so they contribute to the drama triangle. A rebel typically will want to create more pain to deal with their pain, rather than the rescuer who is trying to diminish the pain everywhere because they can't handle their pain. So a rebel is somebody who feels pain when they see the drama arising, and because they can't handle the pain, the best thing to do is to fight. And so therefore to make more of it. Somehow if you fight and you can get angry about everything and you have a cause, then you don't have to feel yourself anymore because you can feel angry and self-righteous about everybody else. The only problem with that is that when we give so much energy as the rebel to what's wrong with the world, or what's wrong with all of these people, what's wrong with my family, what's wrong with this particular person, whether that particular person is someone very close to you or somebody in a very public position, what we're doing is giving fuel to whatever is wrong with them. We are literally giving energy and attention to that person and that behavior, and therefore we're growing it rather than shrinking it. So being a rebel doesn't help nearly as much as it appears to. It attracts a lot of people behind the cause very often, but unfortunately that's a lot of people then giving energy to exactly the thing that we don't want to grow. So it creates more drama, more pain, more suffering, more destruction, and more of what we don't want. put in a nutshell. And then we have the survivor. The survivor energy is really interesting. It's quite a popular energy, and I understand there's a certain strength in being a survivor. I've been the victim, and I survived it. I got through it, which is great. But the difficulty about the survivor is that it holds the energy of the drama all the time. It's kind of like an ongoing, subtle energy that keeps building the drama and therefore keeps building this survivor identity. And you can feel that when you hear the word survivor. I think a lot of us, probably highly sensitive people especially, tend to a little bit like, you feel uncomfortable when you hear that word survivor, and yet you also feel respect to somebody for surviving that victim experience. But what we long for in our soul, in our heart, is not to be a survivor, but to be, a lot of people talk about going from surviving to thriving. That's actually a very good expression here. To be the person who's thriving, not because you are a victim, not because you're still holding your victim story, but because you've transcended that victim position that you had, and you've become a person who's no longer having to hold that story in place. Either you've reframed it so profoundly that it has become part of your new identity in a way that is empowering and part of your greatness, if you like, or because you've let it go, because it's no longer holding sway in your energy field. In the survivor, the victim is holding power all the time, and therefore it's actually difficult to transcend that dynamic. It makes you always hold a kind of wariness, or always hold this feeling that once a victim, always a victim. And so that's why it was somebody called Diana Claire Douglas who runs Collective Constellations, and she's written a book. You can look it up on Amazon. That's why when she told me about this rebel and survivor energy that sits with the drama triangle, I found it really interesting, because all of these positions basically hold in place in the energy field, whether it's the family field or the collective field, the intensity of the drama at some level. So the question then, of course, becomes, how do I as an individual, how do you as an individual, and how do we as collectives, family collectives, work collectives, societal collectives, transcend the dramas that we're experiencing today? It's not how do we transcend drama forever, because there will always be eruptions of drama where things are out of balance. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But do we really need to keep going into the same old drama? Do we need to going back into war as a way of not really resolving conflict? Because actually war never really resolves it. It can reach an intensity where you have to make peace, but it's rare that resolves the underlying problems that caused it in the first place. So we want to look at how do we transcend war by having better ways of resolving conflict, not getting rid of conflict. Conflict arises where there's a clash between different energies. There can be different levels of energy or different levels of development that have different values, and then they clash with each other, and they need to figure out how to live alongside each other and work with each other. That's a perfectly natural thing. We're not all supposed to be the same. We experience conflict inside of ourselves when one of our values doesn't, maybe a new value or a growing value, doesn't match any longer our old values, the values that we're letting go of. And we experience conflict inside ourselves in that. And that's what pushes us to find the place that transcends that conflict and takes us to a new level of development and a new level of integration of ourselves, where we can integrate these warring parts of ourselves, hold both of them in a healthy constellation. That that is a good way of moving past drama. Suppressing the drama, suppressing the conflict between the values inside yourself isn't a long-term solution, because it will always come out somewhere else. It's like if you suppress an illness, you can push it deeper inside yourself, but it will come out in another illness in the way. So suppressing drama doesn't work. Suppressing tension, suppressing conflict, none of these things are a good solution. So we need to learn how to lead in these situations in a way that creates better outcomes, not only for ourselves, but ultimately for everybody, as far as we are able. And this is where we come to what I call wisdom leadership. Wisdom leadership always starts from the inside. The starting point of it is, how do I lead myself in this situation so that I don't contribute to escalating the drama, but I contribute to defusing the drama, transcending the drama, and finding a solution that actually resolves the roots of the drama. That essentially is wisdom leadership. And of course, if we want to do that, we have to step into our place, our inner place of wisdom. We have to step into a place where peace is more powerful than conflict and drama, where we're looking for solutions that unite people rather than dividing people. If you think about it, the drama triangle, the perpetrator, the victim, and the rescuer, divides people. Bringing in the rebel divides people even further. Bringing in the survivor divides people even further. You now have the hero survivors, and then you have the baddie perpetrators. And look, I'm not at any time excusing bad behavior, but what we do need to look at is the underlying dynamics that we all contribute to that enable so much suffering and so much bad behavior to happen. So, how do we find that place of wisdom leadership? One of the things that has helped me a lot is, I remember even as a child, people always used to say when there was a conflict or a drama, you need to compromise, you need to compromise. And I could never understand that. I always felt like compromising was somehow just suppressing everybody. It's like, okay, you give up a bit of being yourself, you give up a bit of being yourself, find something that neither of you likes very much, and then make it work. And it always seemed to me, just as an intuitively, even from when I was very young, that there was something not good about that. What I've learnt over time is what I find to be a much more effective way of working with these situations, which is actually not to go for compromise, but to always look for a solution that works for everybody, it's benign in every direction. And you know that it is because it feels good in every direction and other people feel good in every direction. So a compromise never feels really good in any direction. It's just the best we can do. And look, there may be some situations where compromise is necessary, at least for a while we work out a better solution. But in so many of the dramas that we get caught in our families and actually in our societies, we allow ourselves to be polarized. And once you polarize, you have to compromise, because you have two opposite ends who can never agree with each other. And so they're both going to have to give up something to be able to come a little bit closer to the middle. They're not looking for unity, usually. They're just looking to come away from these poles because the poles have become unbearable. It's like yin and yang. If something becomes too yang, the yin will always form within it. If something becomes too yin, the yang will always form within it and start to grow. And that's how balance always emerges. So when we become too polarized, then well, in a negative cycle, the victim starts to become the aggressor. They go on the warpath or they start to rebel. And the aggressor, the perpetrator, becomes so hurt by their situation that they then become the victim. And then everything gets inverted, and they will start to find different ways of causing harm. Actually, everyone finds different ways of causing harm when we polarize. So life has this self-balancing cycle where there comes a point where the opposite starts to show up. But when that's in a very polarized drama situation, that becomes more negative. That is where we start to generate intergenerational trauma. So maybe the victim has managed to get past being the victim in their own life, but there's so much pain and so much suffering that it causes conflict within the family, which erupts in the next generation or the generation after that. We see this also with countries where the victim maybe gets suppressed, the war is won by the perpetrator, but that hurt never goes away. And then that victim energy eventually becomes aggressive energy and more fights come out. And so it doesn't resolve itself. We need to find a better way than that. So with wisdom leadership, what we need to do first of all is find that uniting energy inside ourselves. The way that I've learned to do that is to sense deeply into all the different conflicting positions in the drama. So I can sense into the victim of the drama, and I can feel that victim energy inside me. Every single one of us knows how to be a victim. So when I know that energy inside me and I recognize it, first of all, I stop judging it, because it's very easy when you are trying to lead to get into the rescuer position where you actually judge the victim. It's like you're saying there's something wrong with that, what's happening to this person, and I want to go and make it go away. And there's a judgment implicit in there that what's happening is wrong. When you recognize that victim inside yourself, when you recognize how easy it is actually for you to go to exactly the same position, that's the beginning of being able to unite. Because then what you can do is have a look at the perpetrator energy and find that energy inside yourself. And much though many rescuers don't want to admit this, all of us as human beings have that perpetrator energy in us. And you can find that very easily because you can look at yourself when you're in a fight with somebody, when you're fighting with your partner or your children, and you will find that energy in you. You'll find the energy sometimes of revenge, or you want to hurt somebody, you lash out at people. We all do that sometimes, and we need to be very honest and recognize that we have that energy inside us. When you can feel those two fundamental energies, maybe then you can feel how uncomfortable they both are for you, and whether you are typically a victim or typically a perpetrator or typically a rescuer, or you've moved into rebel or survival mode. The fundamental dynamic that is so unbearable for all of us is the pain of the perpetrator and the victim. When you can feel their pain and not run away from it, just sit with it and allow it to have space within your energy field and within your awareness, but not just mental awareness. I mean, really within your deep sensing field. And you can allow them to have enough space to express themselves. And preferably, you can allow them to have enough space to fully express themselves inside you. You will feel that conflict fighting inside you. But there is a piece of you that is looking for peace, that is looking for resolution, that is looking for unity. Because fundamentally, we would prefer to love each other and be united with each other than we would to be fighting and hating each other. Every human being knows that in our hearts, even if we find it very difficult to do it. So that uniting principle, that is a principle of life, if you like. Life creates all these different types of life, all these different life forms, different types of human beings, different types of situations. Conflict arises between them because there are so many different values in those different systems, and the values don't always match with each other. So that's quite a natural thing. But life is fundamentally an energy of love. And so it looks to create peace and harmony within that conflict, not to create more and more war. War happens, conflict happens because there are differences, and there must be differences here. But the fundamental underlying impulse of life is to know love, is to know peace. And of course, it can only know those things where there are other experiences for us. So as human beings, we do have the capability to sit with warring feelings inside us and to search for or to long for peace, to long for that place where we transcend the war and unite those warring parties inside us so we feel whole again, we feel integrated. This is a very deep practice. It's a challenging practice because typically we want to run away from the discomfort. It can be almost unbearable, and that's what makes us into rescuers in the first place. It's also what makes us into rebels and ultimately survivors. So to have the ability to hold conflict inside you without trying to control it, without trying to change it, without trying to make it go and become peace, because that doesn't work either. Then you're fighting against the conflict and you bring in another layer of conflict. But to peacefully open up a space for conflict to exist within you, and then to observe and notice and witness and be present and feel. Okay, you actually do need to sense this. If you witness it from the outside and you don't sense what's going on inside you, you don't get the full unity of yourself, this integration of different parts of yourself into a healthy whole. Now, typically, what I found is that when there's conflict like this, there is a part of me that is more evolved and that is emerging. And there is a part of me that has been very strong in the past and is now fading. It is the part that's being let go of. That's typically where conflict happens. So the new part of me is not so strong yet, feels a little weak. It hasn't had a lot of practice. The old part of me feels very, very strong. And it doesn't want to be let go of. It's what I've relied on for a very long time. And what I found that I need to do is go inside myself and find the place where the new version, rather than kind of just fighting with the old one, makes peace with the old one. It's like it takes the essence of the old energy, the core of it. What was that energy trying to do? And it integrates it into the new level that we're moving to. So let's take an example here. Let's take the example that you find yourself being very critical of yourself because you messed something up. You tried to do it, you didn't do it very well, you messed up, you know you did, and then you start to be really hard on yourself. You get really critical. So you're being both the victim and the perpetrator at the same time. Now you can turn this same situation into a family kind of dynamic where one member of the family is criticizing another member of the family. You might be the critic or you might be the victim here, but everybody understands that dynamic. We can also take it to a social level. We have a society now, probably we always have done, where it's very, very easy to criticize. We can criticize sports people who miss the ball, don't win the match, whatever it is. We can be very easy critics and think we know all the answers, but we're not the person who's actually playing on the pitch. We can also be the victims of criticism. At a collective level, there's one group criticizing another group. We have a lot of polarization, so both groups are criticizing each other. We're very familiar with this situation at every level, the big level and the small level. So let's take it back to the inner level. Typically, in a situation like this, the one who is criticizing is somehow, there's something that they want that is a higher standard. There's something that they want that is better. And the part of you that's being criticized is the part that hasn't done it very well, hasn't reached the new standard. So there's some truth in both positions here. There's some truth in wanting a higher standard, but there's also some truth here in just not being able to do it yet, or not having done it yet. So we're in an evolving, learning, growing situation here. And this is very important to recognize, because there is a core truth in here, which is the thing that enables us to transcend to the next level. The core truth is that there's something we want to do, and we want to do it better. And how we've been in the past hasn't been up to that better. Otherwise, we would have already done it. Where we're going to is the better. Now, if you want to bring wisdom leadership in here, instead of criticizing yourself for criticizing yourself, or for being weak, for being bad, so you've got weakness, you've got criticism, then you have criticism. That's the typical response. We criticize ourselves for criticizing ourselves, for having failed in some way. Instead of doing that, we recognize that there is something here that is new. This is the new energy. We're going to a new level, and we weren't very good at that before. Even if we think we should have been, even if we've done it well in the past, we haven't done it well this time. The minute we recognize that, we start to bring in some kindness, a little bit of spaciousness around this whole situation. And we then are able to let that new energy, the new standard, the new level, or the new value become bigger. We don't need anymore to criticize that weakness, because we're simply understanding. It's like, oh, I understand what's happening here. I tried to do something and I didn't do it very well. I'd like to do it better. I'd like to be a person who does it better. And so I'm going to give space to myself. I'm going to be kind and compassionate to myself and say, okay, how do I become a person who does it better? And this is interesting, because then we have options. It could be that I'm the person who does it better next time. I'm going to get better at it. That's one level. But there are other levels of doing this, and I think this is really important. This is where the leadership piece comes in. So one piece is I'm going to lead myself and just do better. But another could be, next time I'm going to lead the situation better. I'm not going to become a victim, because I'm going to put myself in a leadership mode. Not I'm the boss, I'm now going to become the perpetrator. I'm going to control you, the baddie, the aggressor in the situation. I'm not going to try to control the criticizer in me, or the criticizer in somebody else. I'm actually going to lead the situation. Doesn't prevent somebody else from leading from their own space. This is what I think of as wisdom leadership, is I lead from inside myself in a way that allows everybody else to lead from their expertise, from their space. And then together we can come up with a solution that works for all of us. So for example, I got into a situation yesterday. A good example, we were having a party. We'd booked some cleaners very last minute. I had organized them and told them what to do. My husband has a very different picture of what needs to be done from me. I'm not a details person. I just saw generally the floor's clean, everything looked great to me. But what he sees very different things from me. He's a much better cleaner as well. So he sees lots of details that I don't look at. And he was disappointed because he wanted the house to look really nice, and he was seeing all these things wrong that the cleaners hadn't done. And then he was very critical of me, and I was, we were under pressure. We were trying to get a lot of things done. So I naturally started going into that, oh, don't criticize me, I've got enough on my plate, and the underneath victim mode. And it was a very uncomfortable situation. And I didn't have time at the time to really sort it out. I just thought, oh, next time. My lash out, my first response was, will you do it? But it was too late because they'd already gone. But there was some kind of truth in that. And afterwards, I really reflected because I just thought it's very childish. It's a typical thing that happens in relationships, but really not necessary. And so I started to look at it and look at how could I manage that better another time. And first of all, I really understand him. I have situations in my business where I'm the person who knows exactly what I want and other people are not doing that way. How do I navigate that so that I don't just hurt them and criticize them or make them feel inadequate all the time? Because the risk of that is then you just don't want to cooperate anymore. You get more and more difficult or rebellious, and that's a very bad dynamic. So I understand him and I understand myself, because actually being criticized doesn't make you into a better worker or a better human being. It just pushes us into a defensive mode. So I started to look at leadership in a way of how each of us can step into that role, which is not about taking over, but it is about sharing the space consciously with other humans where we all have the part that we're good at. So I can get into, okay, next time I'll make sure I give better instructions. But inside myself, I know that I'll never get it right because I will never see what he sees because I'm a different type of person. And that's the beauty of it. I'm good at that general stuff. I got her booked in very short notice, which he wouldn't have done. He's good at the detailed stuff. So, and look, this seems like a really silly little example, but it's the kind of example that can go on year after year after year if we don't step into wisdom leadership. And this is the key to wisdom leadership at a global level, just as it is at a domestic level. So what I started to see was my normal response, leadership response, would be somehow to lead the situation, just to get into, okay, what are we going to do next time? How am I going to prevent this from happening ever again? But I didn't feel that that was actually a really strong way of doing it. There's again a good impulse in there. How am I going to prevent this from happening again? Yes, let's not repeat these kinds of cycles. But I need to go deeper than that. I need to unite these two parts of me and of us rather than just get control of them. So if I say, well, next time I'm going to make sure that I'll book the cleaner if we have the same situation. He's in charge. My husband is in charge of giving the tasks. Like I've got everything organized and controlled, and now I feel okay again. But that it didn't feel satisfying to me. I needed to go to a deeper place of leadership, or a more expansive place of leadership than just getting control again. Because what that does is it kind of creates this dynamic where I'm the boss in the relationship and he's the person who's being subtly organized by me without me telling him. It felt really uncomfortable. And I didn't think that was a healthy dynamic to build into our relationship. And, there's a degree of it already. I very easily step into boss mode. And very often in every partnership there's that. But I know inside myself that every single one of us is also the leader in our own life. And the way we create healthy collaboration is recognizing that without denying the places where we really are the leader. So there's no question in that situation, I decided to have the party. Like we both wanted to, but I I led that, and I have to own that piece. I have to own where I really am leading, because this is something that I really want to do. And in work, of course, in my business, I have to own the leadership that I have because it's my business. But at the same time, how do we create a dynamic amongst us where we're all stepping into our own leadership in a way that makes us 100% like that we are fully human, fully here, fully wholehearted, not a little bit more wholehearted than normal, but we take responsibility, each one of us, fully for whoever we are and whatever we're doing. And this is where this ability to sit with the two energies becomes really important. Because when I can do that, what happens after a little while is that it's like I start to find the essence of the situation. I start to find a place where all of the goodness in this can unite in such a way that the badness, if you like, the conflict simply doesn't need to take place. And it can unite in a way that feels good to all of us. So I'm not taking control at a level that is unhealthy. I'm also not abdicating control and saying, well, you do it. Because that also doesn't feel healthy. And what then starts to happen is, because with either of those, there's, if it's like, well, I'm going to take control next time, or you take control next time, then there's always this hesitation around the next time. It's like, I'm not sure if I want to do that next time. But if we're able to unite, really unite over something like this, then what happens is we want the future. We want to have another party. We want to have another situation because there's unity, there's beauty, there's joy in it. So this is a different level from the level where we manage the situation so it doesn't happen again. And this is what I'm really interested in now. I think there's a lot of good advice about how to manage situations, how to lead in that way that you manage conflicts and you manage so that things don't erupt. But what I'm interested in is how do we do this so that we unite? We unite the warring parties to create something better. As I speak, I can feel that the important piece is this internal piece that we do inside ourselves. There are no external management techniques that can replace the inner work. When I do the inner work and when I can unite the part of me that is criticizing the other part of me, I can unite the part of me that is over strong with the part of me that is over weak. And I can find the strength through all of me, which is just the underlying beauty of being alive. Then I can translate that into situations. And so when I see the essential beauty of my husband, who does see all these details and is very artistic and is looking for a standard to share with other people in a party that is higher than what I would have. And when I can appreciate that, instead of being afraid of the criticism, I see his fundamental desire to make this into a good experience for people. When I see in myself the strength that I have to organize and coordinate a party and to make food for everybody and to hold all these pieces together and to know that that's something that I do well. And when I see that when both of these play together, we have a better party. And when I go into, we don't need all those details, just do the things that I can see, we have a lesser experience. then what happens is we start to create space for everybody. We start to create space for the contributions that everybody brings. We stop trying to size ourselves and say, I'm bigger than you, or you're bigger than me, or I'm more important, or you're more important. And we start to collaborate in a uniting way to get things done together. And we may all, it may not be that the house isn't perfect and I don't cook perfect food or whatever it is that we're doing, because it no longer becomes about perfection. What it becomes about is creation. We're now creating something together where we're all motivated to do the best we can, because we are allowing this impulse of love to flow through us and to bring us together. I feel like I'm only talking about the beginning of this energy, because this is so powerful and so elusive in a way, and it's so easy to get into that managing mode. It's like, well, I've got a solution for next time. A solutions mode, a managing mode, and I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. That way, next time we're going to organize ourselves properly. We're going to assign our tasks properly. You're going to know what you're responsible for. I'm going to know what I'm responsible for, and then everything will be fine. But the step that I'm exploring here is this unity step, where we unite the warring energies inside us, and then that gets shared with all the people around us. That creates attraction. That means people start coming towards what you're doing. They feel very warm towards it. They want to be a part of it. This means that we don't need rebels anymore who are going against it, because we're uniting people around goodness, a shared thriving, a shared prosperity, where every person has their contribution, their piece to play. This is the piece for me of wisdom leadership. This is a piece that I'm sure that I will unpack further in the future. This is very emergent in terms of our broader culture, because it's not something that you can get really, really good at while other people are really bad at. You only get good at it by doing it with people. And that means you can't get ahead. Our traditional models of leadership, the leader gets ahead and everyone else follows. In this one, you can't get ahead, but you can't also do that kind of leadership where we all stick together and we don't move anywhere because we can't make any decisions. The person who's good at moving ahead has got to be able to move ahead and be united with the people who go more slowly. This is a very different task from what we're used to. And because we're doing this from the inside out, we're doing it alongside every human being. This becomes part of our collective evolution, and every single person who contributes to this uniting wisdom leadership is contributing to the unity of our societies on this planet, so that we can allow for all of the diversity of expression, and it gradually becomes more and more healthy. That's what we're looking for, is a healthy expression of our diversity, of our values, of the uniqueness of all the different human beings and all the different elements of nature on this planet, so that we can work together and do things together and create prosperity together, and start to let go of the levels of drama that we've become accustomed to but we don't enjoy. So this is the beginning of an invitation to explore wisdom leadership at a level that directly creates unity. So you're not being an example out there, you're being an example in here, right here, always here, and it is touching all of us at the same time.